Well, ladies and gentlemen, my most anticipated game of the year released early this time around, with the newest installment in the Yakuza / Like a Dragon series dropping in January. I have played the absolute shit out of this game. I've done everything. I've even platinumed the damn thing. Just look at that gorgeous rainbow. The big question here is, did the game live up to my admittedly lofty expectations? In most aspects, yes it did. The highs of this game are astronomically high, and whilst the lows aren't as low as the highs are high, the lows really disappointed me, because they mostly relate to the story. But we'll talk about the story last, as we will have a spoiler section at the end. First up, the gameplay. So, I am one of the psychos who much prefer the turn-based combat in this series to the brawler style, and even I can admit that whilst Yakuza 7 did a great job at attempting something different for the series, it definitely had a lot of growing pains. However, Infinite Wealth massively improves upon the gameplay of the previous entry. The best improvement has to be the movement. In 7, you kinda just had to deal with wherever your characters decided to go and work around that. That issue is negated in Infinite Wealth due to the ring around your character. You can move your character around this ring, and it adds so much more tactical complexity to the game. You do more damage if you attack an enemy from behind, you do more damage if you're close enough to an enemy to get a proximity bonus. Being able to utilise this in combat is a brilliant addition, and plus when you use AoE attacks, or AoE heals for example, it also shows you another extra little ring showing you exactly which areas will be affected. The job system also works much better this time around. In 7, you could assign jobs to your party members that each brought with them their own abilities. Unfortunately, most of them were pretty useless. For example, if you didn't give Psycho the idle job, you were essentially choosing to handicap yourself. I experimented a bit more with the jobs in Infinite Wealth, and a lot of them are now viable. Whilst there of course will be a meta, you do have a lot more choices available to you and can experiment however you please. And then there's Kiryu. A lot of my issues in regards to the story come with Kiryu, but in terms of his gameplay, they've absolutely nailed it. The Dragon of Dojima comes with 3 fighting styles. There's Rush, which allows you to take 2 turns at once for a damage nerf, which comes most in handy when 2 enemies are low on health and you can just take them both out at once. The Brawler style, which is his standard stance and also allows you to utilise heat actions in classic Yakuza fashion. And finally the Sledgehammer stance, which I only really ever use to break down enemy guards. There's all the standard elemental stuff as well, with enemies being weak and resistant to certain elemental damage, with the gear shop returning, allowing you further customization of your party alongside the job system. The main story dungeons I found a lot more fun. They felt shorter and more focused, and some even have some additional elements between battles, such as one of the earlier dungeons having lasers to dodge in between fights. There's also 2 dungeons that are meant for grinding, one in Hawaii and one in Japan. These are very boring. Every single floor is exactly the same, running from procedurally generated room to procedurally generated room. Thankfully, the main game doesn't really require to grind like the last one did. If you're doing side content as you go, which you probably should be if you want the full Yakuza experience, you'll actually be slightly over the recommended level, and the game will inform you of the recommended level before each dungeon. You will, however, have to grind at the end of the game if you wish to get the platinum, as there is a trophy requiring you to reach level 70, and you'll be around 50 to 55 when you finish the game. All in all, the core gameplay is much improved from the previous entry, so much so in fact that I'd imagine it would be difficult to go back to 7 after playing this. Oh, but there's so much more. Yakuza always shines through its mini-games, and whilst series regulars such as darts and the addicting karaoke obviously return, there are 2 mini-games in particular that take centre stage. The first of these is Sujimon, a Pokemon style game that has way more depth than it has any right to. The classic wacky enemies you defeat around Hawaii can be captured and used in Sujimon battles. It's a 3v3 Pokemon style elemental battle, and it's seriously addictive and seriously grindy. It's clearly something that you're meant to gradually chip away at as you move through the game, and that's pretty much what I did. You can find raids on the map to earn new Sujimon, you can fight fellow Sujimon trainers that you stumble across to level up, and the battles themselves have a rock paper scissors style structure to them. There's 5 elements and they all kind of do different extra damage to each other, whilst also some are obviously resistant to others. And the storyline that accompanies this minigame is the classic Yakuza minigame structure of battling mini-bosses until you progress enough to take on the final boss. It's a hell of a lot of fun. But the big minigame here is Dondoku Island. This shit is insane. They should bottle this up and sell it. Holy crap. Dondoku Island is an Animal Crossing style minigame where you clean up trash and build up a resort on an island. It should be illegal how addicting this thing is. It could genuinely be released as its own standalone release. Like Sujimon, this is also intended to chip away at as you progress through the game, as you can invite people you meet through the game during sub-stories and even some main events to the island. But that's not what I did at all. I bummed this thing start to finish as soon as it was unlocked. The loop of fishing and collecting trash to building stuff and making money is just so addicting. I'm not overly experienced with Animal Crossing, but if it's anything like this, then maybe I should. There are enemy pirates who want to use the island for waste disposal, and the story revolves around building your resort into a 5-star resort whilst removing the pirates from the equation. It's full of life and charm, and it will make the hours simply disappear. You can even bring in the Sujimon you've collected to farm resources for you via unpaid labour. It's definitely not legal, but it works. You also unlock the best skill in the game for completing it, which is always nice. There's also a bunch of other stuff to do, of course. This is Yakuza. There's Crazy Delivery, where you deliver food and do backflips on a bicycle. As I said, classic Yakuza stuff.
Crazy Delivery!
There's Mismatch, where you essentially just love bomb random women on Tinder. The Photo Rally, where you just take pictures of random things in Hawaii. There's Sicko Snap, which the less said about that the better. And then the Bond events also return, where as you level up a party member's bond level, they gain extra abilities in battle, and eventually culminate in a decent side story for each of them. Overall, there's just a ton of stuff to do in this game. I got the platinum after 75 hours, but you could definitely do it faster. I was just playing the game pretty naturally and then cleaned up towards the end. We've gotten this far into the video without even talking about Hawaii itself. Yeah, the game is set in Hawaii, and it's awesome. We all know RGG love reusing assets, so we'll undoubtedly see Hawaii again at some stage, but it's just gorgeous. Ichiban really embraces the tourist aspect, and it's just got a really good vibe to it in general exploration. It feels as real as Kamurocho always did, so Hawaii gets a massive thumbs up for me. There's a bit of ludo-narrative dissonance in the sense that every single person Ichiban meets seems to speak fluent Japanese, and this is even more jarring considering that the game makes Ichiban's inability to speak English an early plot point early on, which is quickly then forgotten about apparently. The side stories were a real mixed bag for me. Some of the most emotional sub-stories in the entire series are here, one in particular, which if you've played it you'll know what I mean, but there's also a hell of a lot of filler. I did all 52, and there aren't that many memorable ones really, and a lot were pretty mediocre for a series which usually nails this out of the park. But overall, Hawaii was one of the best aspects of this game, and I really hope we come back in whichever game RGG make next. Now, we've got the story. Oh boy, this video is already getting on the longer side, but strap in, cause we ain't done yet. No major spoilers just now. I will give you a warning before we discuss spoilers, but I will say that most of my issues with the story do come from the ending. In typical Yakuza fashion, Infinite Wealth has an incredibly slow start, even slower than most. It's mostly just refamiliarizing yourself with the cast, before Ichiban flies off to Japan to do something. I don't know if that would count as a spoiler, so I'm not gonna say. The introduction to Hawaii was brilliant. It shows Ichiban acclimatizing to his new environment nicely. Your first couple hours in Hawaii are extremely linear. You'll be playing the game for around 5 hours total before you can free roam around, but once those shackles are let free, enjoy Hawaii, baby. I feel like following the slow opening 3 chapters, chapters 4 to 7 are the golden moments for this game's story. The goal is still simple, the plot revelations are placed nicely, you're spending a good amount of time with the new characters. I had the most fun during this time. After chapter 8, I'd say, things get a bit complicated. The group splits into two parties, and from that point, the story revelations dance between ridiculous and predictable. There is not one act of betrayal in this game that comes as a surprise, and unravelling the mystery just becomes a convoluted mess by the end. At least half of the 10 playable characters serve no purpose other than just to be a party member. They're just there, especially Zhao and Jungi. Definitely pronounced wrong, I apologise. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just got added in towards the end of development, because they offer nothing to this game. You could have removed them and I don't think many people would have noticed. And a bunch of other non-playable characters serve as nothing more than plot devices, especially the Daidoji. After playing Gaiden, I was really excited for the Daidoji. Gaiden makes them seem like this omnipresent, all-powerful organisation, but in Infinite Wealth, they're either incredibly powerful or incredibly brain-dead, depending entirely on whatever is required for the plot to advance. The Daidoji are nothing more than a plot device in this game. Some of the new characters were brilliant, if underutilised a tad. Tomizawa was someone I enjoyed spending time with for the first half of the game, but his arc is sort of finished by the midway point, and then he's just kinda there. Chitose was handled much better. She was a brilliant addition with a lot going on, and whilst there are gaps where she's not doing much, her story still continues until the end of the game. Yamai was my favourite new character though. He has a coldness about him that makes him a terrifying foe, and each time he appears, he just absolutely kills it, and his development and motivations are explored thoroughly. If more characters got the time to shine like Yamai did, then my opinion on this game's story would probably improve considerably. Ichiban is just as personable as usual, although his ultra-friendly I wanna help everybody thing leads to a lot of dumb moments and decisions in this game that fly directly in the face of what he's trying to accomplish in the first place. He'll just constantly risk innocent lives in order to help someone who's wronged him, and not only is it wholly unrealistic in the context of the game, it's immersion breaking because no matter how goofy and naive he may be, nobody in his situation would make some of the decisions he does. You could write this off as a character flaw, and characters are supposed to have flaws, and I do understand that, but this feels like a step too far. Yakuza is always a series that has made you kind of have to take a step back and take everything with a pinch of salt, but Ichiban's wholly idealistic view of everything, I don't really think that it's been explored well enough, and it needs to be dialed back in the next game. Kiryu also has a lot going on. He's got a fringe now, for starters, but to speak more about Kiryu, we're gonna have to enter the spoiler zone. We're gonna talk about Kiryu's section as well as the ending, so skip to this time to avoid that. So, not only does Kiryu have a fringe now, he also has cancer, which is obviously not good, and the entirety of Kiryu's arc persists of him battling with himself to keep on living. He's seemingly accepted his fate when we run into him in Hawaii, and believing he's caused problems for anyone he's encountered in his life, doesn't want to reconcile with those from his past. Date returns and says, "Fuck that, and fuck you, Kiryu. I'm gonna mentally torture you and make you sit 10 feet away from everybody you've ever cared about, all the while hearing them talk about you, while you can't do a goddamn thing about it." I really liked the idea of these life links, but their execution was poor, and the final one really pissed me off. The reminiscing collectibles you can pick up as Kiryu were pretty cool, and it was nice to take a good trip down memory lane. Now, from a storytelling perspective, I'm not against Kiryu dying at all, and the game absolutely frames the second half of this game as Kiryu's final saga. With the whole life links and bucket list thing, they set this game up for Kiryu to die. Yet, he once again wriggles out of it for another game. How they handle Kiryu in the next game will be crucial for RGG. They cannot have him keep doing this. He needs to retire for good or kick the bucket. They're dragging him into each game because they're scared to let him go. All they need to do is iron out the kinks of Ichiban's character, and he's ready to lead the series. I love Ichiban. I realise now the only kind of time I've mentioned him is when I'm criticising him. But I actually do really like Ichiban. They just need to rein in his idealism a little bit. But going back to Kiryu, whilst it was nice to see Haruka, the fact that they cock-teased us with their reunion twice is quite frankly disgusting, and if their reunion has actually happened off screen, I will be fuming. I will say, however, that I do really like the fact that he reclaimed his name at the end of the game, because Kiryu going out with a whimper under a fake name would just do a massive disservice to the character. Whenever Kiryu goes out of the series, he either needs to go out peacefully in retirement with Haruka, or he needs to go out in a blaze of glory, and this game didn't really provide either of those scenarios, so in the next game, that is how his saga needs to end, and it does need to end, because they can't just keep dragging him along. That's just Kiryu's side of the ending though. Ichiban's is just as bad. I actually don't think it's horrendous, but it was very poorly executed. For a start, and this is my big issue, and I haven't seen any discourse about this game's ending, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I feel surely other people have the same issue with this ending that I do. Why on earth is Ichiban obsessed with Ai-chan? Sure, he reminds him of Aoki, but the ending implies that they were extremely close before his obvious betrayal. But we didn't see that at all. We saw him take him for food at the start of the game. Why does the ending of this game act like he was just some troubled soul who ventured away from his blood brother who got steered down the wrong path? He was willing to kill a child. He was never sincere with his feelings towards Ichiban. It was always a means to an end. This is one of those moments I referenced earlier that are just immersion breaking. Kiryu is literally passed out on death's door at the top of the Millennium Tower, and at the very same time Ichiban is carrying Ai-chan to the police station so he doesn't have to go on his own with all the angry people. No human being would do this for a man that tried to kill a child. It's dumb. The ending makes out that they were a hell of a lot closer than we were shown. If they wanted to pull that shit, then they really needed to develop that relationship a hell of a lot more. And just when I thought they were finally handling the Seiko relationship properly, they pulled that dumb shit at the end. I get it's a gag at the end of the game, and it's not a big deal, I don't really care. But just once, can RGG handle a love interest properly? Because Seiko is once again a character who contributed nothing to this game other than being lusted over by Ichiban. I got to the end, and I didn't even talk about any of the villains. We'll do that now quickly. Abina could have been great, but didn't get enough development. I liked where they were going with his character, but again, not enough screen time. It's kind of crazy that a game that is this long has so many characters lacking in screen time, because Yakuza has this big issue, and it's always had it, where characters will talk around in circles for 10 minutes and not learn anything new. Somebody needs to come into RGG and tell them how to write concise dialogue, because I'm just sat here now thinking, how is this game as long as it is while so many characters are underdeveloped? It's because they spend so much time talking about nonsense. But anyway, rant over. Villains. Bryce. Bryce was a terrible villain. He was barely present and just referred to as this overseer controlling Hawaii from the shadows. That could have been cool, and when he's revealed in the mid-game, it is, but it's not capitalised on at all. And the whole thing was about trash. Do me a favour, man. I don't think that this is the worst ending in the world, and it's definitely not the worst ending in the series, but I was just let down with where this game went from chapter 9 onwards, I'd say. 4 to 8 was so strong that I thought we were in for an all-timer, and yeah, I'd put Infinite Wealth in my top 5 Yakuza games, but there was a moment where I thought about the possibility of it potentially rivaling Yakuza 0, but it ended up falling quite short of that mark. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I'm sorry if this seemed a bit negative. It's going to be really ironic when I get to my Game of the Year list at the end of the year, because this is definitely going to be right up there. I loved this game. I thought it was brilliant. The story just disappointed me a bit, and I didn't want to end on that note. I want to end on a positive note. This game is amazing. If you've played it, you know that. If you haven't, do it. I wholly recommend it. It's incredible. But for now, that is all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, as that would greatly help me out. And if you want to see even more videos from me, you could always consider subscribing. I did upload a video on Gaiden last month. Go and check that out. But that's all for now. Have a nice day, and goodbye.